What is going on, Guardians? Ember here with another one for you. Today I have an incredibly fun solar build for PvE. We're going to be using an exotic called Dawn Chorus paired with Sunshot, creating all kinds of fiery explosions. That's always a great time. But before we get too far into it, head down below this video, absolutely obliterate that like and subscribe button. Stick around at the end of the video for an original meme. Let me know in the comments section down below if this is the kind of content you like to see. And without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, Guardians, let's get into this build and talk about what makes it so strong. Right here, the featured exotic we're using today is the Dawn Chorus exotic helmet for Warlocks. We're going to be pairing that with the solar subclass, of course, but let's get into the perk here on it. Rites of Ember. Your Daybreak projectiles cause targets to scorch on contact. Your Scorch effects deal more damage, and you gain a small amount of melee energy each time your Scorch effects damage a target. So we're going to be using that last sentence here. Scorch effects deal more damage, and you gain a small amount of melee energy each time you damage a target. That's going to be what we're using more often than not here. Of course, that does help with our overall super damage with the Daybreak projectiles causing targets to scorch on contact. But let's talk about what really makes this incredible here. In our subclass, we're going to be using the Incinerator Snap. I'm using Incinerator Snap because I've heard that Celestial Fire does not always proc Scorch as predictably, and we want to make sure we're getting as many targets scorched as possible, creating those ignitions, since now Sunshot will help to add more scorch to targets when that Sunblast explodes, and we're going to be using Sunshot, of course. So we're using the Daybreak Super, we're using our Healing Rift, Burst Glide, like I said, Incinerator Snap. I'm going to be running a Solar Grenade here just to keep spreading that Scorch in the widest radius possible. We're using the Touch of Flame Solar Aspect for our Solar Grenade, the Icarus Dash ability so we can get that dodge in case we need to get moving. The fragments we're using today are Ember of Eruption, Ember of Searing, Ember of Ashes, and Ember of Mercy. We'll get into how that all affects the build here once we get into the gameplay. Like I did say, we're using Sunshot here, which is going to really help. I don't think they updated the actual text for it yet, but it does spread Scorch whenever you kill a target. So you'll see in the gameplay, there's a couple of times where an unstoppable champion is coming after me. I hit him with the Incinerator Snap, but maybe not all of the little projectiles will hit, because if we can get all of them to hit, it will cause an immediate ignition, since we're using one of those special embers in that fragment slot up there. But if there are any enemies around that target at all, we kill one of them, that'll spread enough Scorch to that target to then get the ignition and then stun the champion, or you'll just be igniting everything around it anyway. So I'm also going to be pairing this with an Imperial Decree shotgun with Pugilist and Swashbuckler. That's going to help us to keep our melee abilities going for as long as possible. The heavy I'm using today is a Briar's Contempt with Reconstruction and Frenzy. We're going to be having about 12 rounds in the magazine and never having to reload it. It's pretty funny. Let's over to the mod customization screen here, take a peek at what we got going on, and let's get into that gameplay. Alright, so obviously you can see in the background gameplay here, we are throwing all kinds of flaming abilities out all over the place, throwing out as many supers as we possibly can, and scorching tons and tons of targets, because Dawn Chorus is going to allow us to deal way more damage with our Dawn Blade Super. It's going to add more Scorch ticks to targets, and it's going to make them deal extra damage. And like I said earlier, we're going to be pairing all of this with our Incinerator Snap. We're going to try and use this as much as possible. We have all of our fragments set up to give us our snap as quickly as we can. We have all kinds of mods and stuff that are going to give us our snap whenever we do things like pick up orbs or kill targets just in general. Use our grenade, use our rift, our class ability, any of that stuff. And it's just going to help us to keep pumping out as many of those snaps as possible, keeping Scorch going on through all of the targets, and that's really where Sunshot comes in. When we do scorch those enemies with our Incinerator Snap, we want to target those smaller, weaker, minor enemies around larger, more beefy enemies so that we can spread tons and tons of Scorch to them, eventually we will ignite them, causing a huge explosion and spreading even more Scorch around, allowing us to chain it almost indefinitely. And when we do get that chain going, it makes it even more powerful, because when we do see our Scorch stacks falling off of enemies, maybe we have to reload or something like that, giving another snap, because we will have it back by then. We have a very, very quick recharge on that. We can activate our snap again, or maybe throw a grenade and just cause huge, massive explosions. It's very fun, so entertaining. It's one of the most fun builds I've been using lately, and I'm definitely going to be adding it to my rotation for things like this seasonal activity, where there's just so many ads to be dealing with all the time, everywhere. Alright, let's break this build down a little bit more, get into some of the aspects and fragments, some of the mods as well for our real build nerds. First off, with our fragments, we have 4 fragments here. Ember of Eruption, which is going to give us Ignition's area of effect. It's going to increase that area of effect, and it's going to give us plus 10 strength. We also have Ember of Searing. Defeating Scorch targets creates a fire sprite and grants melee energy, gives us plus 10 recovery as well. We then have Ember of Ashes. More Scorch stacks are applied whenever we give Scorch stacks to a target. That's very important. And then we have Ember of Mercy. Gives restoration to you and your allies after reviving. Picking up fire sprites also grant restoration, and it gives us plus 10 resilience. So importantly, our Ember of Searing and our Ember of Mercy are going to be working together really, really well here. Ember of Searing allowing us to create a fire sprite, and then also getting our melee energy, and then as well getting fire sprites to give us restoration to make sure that we're not constantly dying while we're in the middle of our fights, because we do have to be semi-close range with those incinerator snaps to get them to correctly proc and deal damage. And again, with our mods, we're doing things to make sure we have our snap up as much as possible. It's so powerful. We're really going to be building into it. We have our melee kickstarts, our grenade kickstarts, stacks on stacks and charged up, solar and harmonic siphons, 2 invigoration mods, and then an outreach mod as well. So the invigoration is going to give us energy for our melee ability on orb pickups, and if there are no orbs around, you need that melee ability. Maybe you have a champion coming at you, an unstoppable champion. You will be able to use the outreach mods to give you melee energy on your Rift cast. And all of this works together beautifully. You'll notice there are some times in the background gameplay where we have some scions that spawn with void shields. I'll hit them with a snap, and they will all still die through their shields, even though they're void shields, because the extra Scorch that we're getting from Dawn Chorus, the way that we're getting that extra damage for all of our Scorches, it's just way too much for the shields to handle. And so you can really take this into some very high level gameplay here. And you know, for right now, since we don't have any hand cannon mods for champions, it might not work the best, but I would keep this in your back pocket for lost sectors and things like that when we do hit other seasons with hand cannon mods, so we can be stunning those champions. And thanks again, Guardians, for hanging out. That's going to have to be all for me for today. Let's go ahead and throw that meme up on the screen. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below about the Dawn Chorus helmet for Warlocks. I personally love it, and I'm very, very happy that they did give it an ornament. I think this ornament is excellent and makes it very appealing as opposed to the previous regular look of that ornament where you kind of look like Sid the Sloth from Ice Age. But again, I do appreciate you all for stopping by, and until next time, be without form, swift as lightning.